Looks like it's preparing to stream.
We're meeting now on YouTube, it says, so. There we go.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for joining us at the Restored Table. And I want to introduce you to us again. And I'm Ann Pierce from Canada. I'm a strategic coach. And we have Donna Fisher, who is a coach. If you would just introduce yourself, Donna.
Hi, I'm from Canada, Donna Fisher, and I'm a identity coach.
And we have the lovely Kimberly Swam.
Swam. It's okay.
Who swims?
That's right. Well, I swam. My name is Kimberly Swaim, and I am a relationship coach with a really focusing on intimacy. So that is what I do.
And behind the scenes, and she will be looking after our chat today, is Devin. And Devin is a nutritional. And I don't know, Devin, if you want to pop on for a moment, or at least even on, yep.
Hi. Yes, I'm from Texas. I guess it's its own country. I'm from America. And it's such a joy to help women just overcome emotional eating. I think is my biggest specialty. So it's such an honor to be here today.
And today we have a real treat. We have Connie joining us. And Connie, I don't want to butcher your last name, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Connie is an author. She's written a book called Dream On. She's written 2 books, actually. We'll let her tell you a little bit about that. And if you remember from last week, we were talking about hope. We're talking about dreaming, and I had actually mentioned Connie's book. And so we reached out to Connie to ask her if she would come on and really just share what's in her heart as far as being able to dream, where we're in maybe in a society in a time frame right now where there's a lot of dreams maybe feel like they're being crushed. Maybe people have in some ways lost their homes, been laid off from jobs. So dreaming and hope are kind of maybe being squashed down a little bit. So we reached out to Connie and she agreed to come on. And so we're gonna just really ask her some questions and really let her share what's on her heart as far as even why she wrote this book in the first place. So again, thank you for joining us. So Connie, we can kind of lead off with that question as to really what was in your heart as far as being able to dream, and what do you think got put in your heart as to why you actually became an author of this book of Dreaming On?
Yes, first of all, my last name is Scipio. It's a Polish name. You don't pronounce the Z, so it's Scipio, or as we say, CP30, if that helps you remember it. So yes, I've had the privilege in my life of fulfilling so many of my dreams, and I just really wanted to let my book be an inspiration to people, but I wanted to go beyond that. I wanted to provide people with dream strategies. So not only to say, oh, that's wonderful for you, great, you fulfilled your dreams, but what about me? And so it's sort of like 2 books in one. One chapter I talk about a country in the world where I was and what I was doing in the work and so forth. And then every other chapter is dream strategies, how to keep your dreams alive and take steps towards fulfilling them. And what do you want to say, that applies to people whether they don't have a dream, or maybe they have an old dream that needs to be remodeled, or because maybe we can't do what we could at age 18 and now we're 70 and that kind of thing. Or, just to carry on with a dream you are currently working on. So I try to touch on all of that. And I've lived a very unusual life. So when I was first a teenager, it really started in my teen years, and now I'm 72. So I kept my dreams alive over many, many years, and at times it was very frustrating. It's like, why aren't my dreams coming true? but then they did, and, different things. So I wanted my life to be an inspiration and to say to people, it's never too late. There's a lot of people that have retired and they're feeling useless. They're feeling like nobody cares about what they did or their life. It's hard to talk to grandkids even. One of the reasons I wrote this book is for my grandkids, so that, right now they're not too interested in my life, and, they're on their phones and they're on their chats, and it's hard to sometimes even carry on a conversation. But I know that one day they'll look back and say, I wonder what her life was all about. So I'm hoping that even after I'm gone, that this book will inspire others not to give up on their dreams.
Connie, is there something in the book that you wrote that actually you pull out for yourself the most? Like, it's one thing for us to come along and, as coaches, or you even as an author, is there something that you yourself find that you have to keep pulling out? Because, I think of any of the authors that I know, oftentimes when you write something, whether it's a poem to a book, you end up having to walk out the very thing that you have been writing about, that you supposedly look like the expert about. So is there something that you in your life, just with all of, you just have to keep pulling that out for you, and you can really just chat about that, just share from your heart about that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm in a season like that right now. I had
share some of that. I think that would be good. Share some of that with with us, because you've gone through quite the season.
Yeah. So this is just an example of how unexpected things happen in life. Things that slam us, blindside us, and it's like, oh my goodness, how does this fit into my life and my plans and what I had intended to do, right? So in September, my daughter and I went down to Cancun for a vacation, and on day one, not day 7, but day 1, I completely tore the ACL in my knee. And, I had to call the doctors of the resort and so forth. And she says, you can't walk on that leg, you can't be swimming, you can't be walking in the sand. And we went down for a beach vacation, right? And it's like, oh my goodness, you got to be kidding me, right? And so that was a challenge, but, we worked through it, and we're still able to enjoy our vacation, but not obviously in the way that we'd hoped. And that brings up a phrase that I live by a lot. And I believe it was Dr. Schuler that wrote this in a book many years ago called Tough Times Never Last, but Tough People Do. And he said that problems never leave us the way they found us. They either make us bitter or they make us better. And we better decide in the middle of that circumstance how we want to come out at the other end. So I pull that out very often. And so it's like, my daughter's, well, maybe we should go home, this and that. I said, no, we're not going home. We're going to make the best of this situation if we can. So that's what we did. And then in February, she had to have major surgery. She lives in Florida, so I went down to help her. And I went for a walk one day, very early on, shortly after she got home. And I was crossing the street, and I looked up, and here a car was barreling through the intersection. I looked up, not only was she not slowing down, but she was literally accelerating and coming straight for me. So at that moment, I basically had to run for my life, at which point my knee totally gave way and I fell to the concrete. And I ended up having 2 fractures in my knee that I'm still recovering from. And so the doctor said, you have to be off that leg for 6 weeks, be in a wheelchair. Had to immobilize the knee for a couple of weeks. And so that was really hard for somebody that's very active. And so then about 3 weeks into it, it got even worse because I got extremely ill and ended up with bilateral multiple pulmonary embolisms in my lungs, which can kill you. So basically, within 2 months' time, I just about died twice. I could have got, killed by the car, could have got killed by the embolism, and here I am. It's like, okay, that wasn't in my plan, so it wasn't part of my dream. So at that point, you have to pivot, and I have to keep saying to myself, okay, and they can't do surgery now for probably maybe 3 to 6 months because I need a knee replacement until the embolisms clear up. So it's like, okay, what am I going to do these next 3 to 6 months? Because I can't do what the things I love to do. So, you know, that it was very hard. It's been very hard. And so I have to pull out my book and say, dream on. There are still things you can do, you know. And so, you know, here I am. I could have said to you this morning, I woke up and my knee was really hurting badly. You know, I'm sorry, I can't do this after all. And look what I would have missed. I would have missed this beautiful conversation we're going to have, right? Mm-hmm. Or I could have said, no, you know, this is my first interview. I don't feel comfortable. You know, I probably won't say the right thing, or the lighting isn't right. I've never done a YouTube, forget it, you know, but part of my dream is to eventually, you know, do some public speaking and do events like this about my book so that I can encourage people not to give up on their dreams. So, you know, we have opportunities to get better. We have opportunities to make something out of, you know, what's happened. So I think that's an attitude we have to keep throughout our whole life. Is it easy? Absolutely not. You know, is it hard? Yes. Even this past year, I left for Senegal to be the finance director on mercy ships in Africa. And, you know, I got there and 2 weeks later, they had to shut the mission down because of COVID. So it's like, oh my goodness, I was supposed to be gone for 5 months. You know, here we are. And they said, you know, if you want to go home, all the airports are shutting down. If you want to go home, the embassy is putting together a flight to take people home, and it's probably your last opportunity to go home. But if you want to stay, that's fine too. So I said, I want to stay. And then less than an hour later, they said, oh, all you older people are being evacuated whether you want to or not. So 2 weeks after I left home, I was back home again. And, you know, so it's like, what do I do now? So we're in the middle of COVID, we're in lockdown, and, you know, it can be very discouraging, especially for older people. It's like, you know, get away from us, don't be near us, you know. And so I thought, well, I've had these 2 books that I've been working on, both of which I've wanted to write for many years. So I said, okay, it's time to finish those books. So at the age of 71, I finished Dream On, the book we're talking about today. It got published in December, and then in January, at age 72, I wrote a book called Wounded No More, an individualized plan to help heal church wounds, so helping people that have been hurt in the church. So they both became international bestsellers. So here we are in the middle of COVID, in the middle of a scrubbed mission, in the middle of all these health issues, and it could have been give up, right? But that's not who I am. And that's what I'm encouraging other people not to do either. Don't give up. It's not too late. As long as there's life in you, you know, you're here on this earth for a purpose, and it's never too late. And sometimes we have to pivot. Sometimes we have to adjust. Sometimes we have to say, I can't do what I could do at 18, but by goodness, there's something about that dream at 18. Pull up the essence of that dream. Like what was really pulling your heartstrings at that time about that dream? You had that dream for a reason. There was something about it that just grabbed your heart. Well, pull out the essence of that and then apply it maybe in a different way. You know, when, I don't know if you want me to go on or ask a different question, but.
Any thoughts, girls, as far as being able to pivot and pivot with your dream? I think that's a really profound statement, Connie.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking as you were talking, I'm like, I'm soaking it all in. And I am really, the thing that stood out was tough times never last, tough people do. But you either make it better or you become bitter. Like it either makes you better or you become bitter. And so right. I hear you say there are pivots. What maybe is something that you can give that might be tangible for people like me in the younger generations? Because like your daughter, the people that you're around are watching. Sure. Like we're sure. watching. So how in those pivotal moments have you been able to make it better and not just go bitter? because you've had some doozies just in the last year.
Right. Well, for example, let me talk to you a little bit about a dream that I have and then how it changed, and and it became something different and my children are involved. So, and I went through a divorce and I became a single parent of 3 children. So when I was a teenager, I would lay in bed at night and cry about the people that were dying in Africa and all these places in the what we called the undeveloped world at that time. People were dying for want of something simple like a shot of penicillin. And you could, translate that today into people are dying, they don't have the vaccine or whatever in some of these third world countries. And, to me, that was just a God-given thing. It was like, I just had such concern for the people that don't have access to medical care. So I wanted to become a medical missionary. Well, it didn't work out. I mean, we make choices in life and life happens and, and all these things, but I never lost that desire. And so I did not become a doctor, okay? I didn't even graduate from college for a long time. I graduated from college at 53. And, I went 2 years to college. Our family ran out of money and I couldn't go. And I would take classes here and there, but I never got my degree. And finally at 53, I says, I want that degree, So I went back to school. But anyway, I was able to become involved with organizations that actually help with medical care. So for example, joining Mercy Ships, I didn't go on Mercy Ships as a doctor. I went on Mercy Ships working in the accounting department. Okay, I pivoted. I didn't, I wasn't able to actually do the medical work, but I was able to support the people that do. And then an opportunity came, and then I had my kids, an unexpected divorce, and I thought, well, someday I'll go to the mission field, when I'm older, whatever. And the opportunity came, and my kids 2 of them were in junior high school. I have twins and a daughter that was in high school. And I had the opportunity to become a finance manager for Mission Aviation Fellowship in New Guinea. And it was like, what? And it was now, it's like, that was going to be down the road, right? And so I went to my kids and I said, if this is right, it has to be right for all of us, not just me. And it wasn't that the kids were going to make the decision, but I went to each of the kids and we had a family meeting and I said, this opportunity came up. It has to be right. If it's right, it has to be right for all of us, not just me. What do you think? And the one kid said, I don't want to go. Another kid said, absolutely yes. The other kid said, yes, but not now. Well, what do you do with that, right? And so I told the kids, all I ask is that you think about it, pray about it. Let's talk to people. Let's do whatever, and we'll talk later. And we talked later, and every one of the kids said yes. And it's so we went, and not very many single parent people become missionaries and get to go overseas, right? So, I mean, that was an amazing adventure, and my kids to this day have a heart for, the undeveloped world, and they see how the other half of the world lived, and people said, why are you taking your teenagers, out of the country? Most people at this time are bringing them back. And I says, they need to see how the other half of the world lives. They don't, kids don't understand how good they got it in this country. And they learned what it is, how blessed they are to live in America and the opportunities that they have. So, in fact, my daughter later married somebody that we met on the mission field over there. So it's been, quite the journey. So I could have just thrown up my hands and said to those people, there's no way I can go. I'm a single mom. I got 3 kids. That can't possibly work. And yet, because it was part of a dream, it was like, well, you got to look at this, right? And even we need to be open to those opportunities that come along. I wonder if I could just share one thing about hope. I was thinking about it, and I came up with an acronym about hope, because hopes and dreams have to kind of go together, because if you have no hope that your dream will ever come true, you're going to give up, right? Mm-hmm. You have to take action steps towards your dream and keep the hope alive. So I thought I just took the 4 letters, HOPE. So H to me means that hope helps us through the hard times. So H stands for help and hard times. O is it opens us to new possibilities and adventures that are waiting for us down the road. And if we're not open to those possibilities or open to those adventures or open to the things that, come our way that are in line with our dream, we're not going to jump on it, or we won't even see them. In many cases, we won't even see it as an opportunity. And then P, hope is a perspective. It's a perspective about life, about ourselves, and about our beliefs, I think. And E, I think, stands for essential. I think hope is essential. So because if, like I said, if we don't have hope that, our lives matter, or we can make a difference or whatever, we give up, and or we think we're just not good enough, or we're too old, or we're too young, or we're too this, or we're too that, or we're married, or we're not married. Or, there's any number of ways to look at that, right? Mm-hmm. And so anyway, those are things that come to mind.
Did you have people that tried to squash your hope when you were, that must have been a pretty big shock to your friends and even to your family, your extended family, saying, hey, what are you doing taking your teenage children all the way to a foreign country? Like that must have been, for you not to be a medical missionary, I think there's that empathetic part of all of us in humanity that we'd pick up on that, but you're going to be a bookkeeper, you're going to be an accountant in a foreign land with your 3 teenagers. So did you have people that tried to squash your hope, squash the dream that had been inside of you from the time you were 18? So pushback.
Yeah, I think it went both ways. The people that really knew me well, it's like, well, that sounds like you, Connie, that sounds like you, because to me, there's 3 or 4 things that are really important to life to me, and I think it's important to identify those things. And for me, it's travel, adventure, and service to God and country. So if somebody asked you, give me the 4 things that are most important to you, what is your answer?
Well, that's a really good point.
And so my good friends were very supportive, and what can we do to help? And we're here for you. And other people, more like my family and other people, it's like, man, you're crazy. And my whole life I felt kind of marginalized in the sense of, how do I put it? Here's another phrase I've lived by, and that is that mere security is a barren ideal. And it's like, okay, so you got security, now what? And not that security isn't important, it is. But once you have some security, then what, right? And so I took a lot of chances. I took a lot of risks. I didn't work in the same job for 20 years at the same place doing the same thing. That sounded like death to me. That's just my personality and the way I was born, right? And it's like, people were like, why can't you just, keep a job? And I did a lot of contract work. I did a lot of project work. I did a lot of, things with an end date to it. And why can't you just keep a job, And it's like, and I'd feel down about myself until the day that I finally understood that's not who you were made to be. And I think we have to appreciate who we are. And then when I kind of finally identified those 4 things, it's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That is who I am, and why am I trying to apologize for that, right?
Yeah, there's probably things we all want to apologize for, and yet that's who we've been made for.
Yes.
Miss Connie, I'm so tracking all of this. Thank you for coming in and speaking. And I want to ask a question, and
Sure.
I don't want to come across, this restored table. We can come to the conversation and ask international questions and also multi-generational level questions. And when I was a teenager, I asked an older relative of mine a question, and then I was shamed for asking the question. So I'm coming a little timidly because I don't want to dishonor you in any way.
Sure.
But I do want to ask, was there a moment, like you mentioned that you got divorced and became a mom of 3. Is that a moment where you pivoted and remembered some of those dreams? Was that a defining moment for you? Because some of those childhood dreams had gotten kind of sidetracked, or like the adventure changed for you? Is because when you're talking about two women in their 40s, like myself, and I hear you say, you need to know what's important to you. As a mom of four children myself, as a wife to a military man, like we move all over. And somewhere in that, I lost
Lost
me.
yourself.
Yeah. And it took me moving to Germany with my children and shoving them in schools. And I love how you were a little bit wiser in your way of handling your children's heart. But maybe that's because you had grown before you went overseas to do this mission work. And so for me, it's like, I don't feel shame. We put our kids in German school and made them learn German. We didn't ask, we told. Like,
Right.
you'll thank us later. And I love that tenderness with you, where you were like inviting your children into that adventure, like inviting them into listening to the Lord in that. And I didn't do it that way, but at the same time, maybe it's because your path was different.
Mhm.
But knowing what's important to us is like that key phrase. So where in that journey of yours did you become vitally aware of what was important to you? Was there like a one
Um,
aha moment, or was it multiple moments along the way? Can you help us out?
Yeah, it's kind of both. And like you, we were a military family, so we were going all over, right? And at the time I got divorced, we were living on Norton Air Force Base, and we had to get out of base housing because we were no longer dependents, right? It was really, really hard. I wasn't working. I hadn't worked in 10 years, and I was been a stay-at-home mom. And I remember trying to rent a place, and the lady says, who are you and do you have a job? I said, I don't at the moment. And she said, well, we don't rent to riffraff. Now you can imagine how that broke my heart. It was terrible. It was like, what? Here I've been this, godly woman that has tried so hard to do everything according to the word of God and according to what I believed and so forth. And now I'm being called riffraff because I'm divorced and I have 3 kids and I have no job and I hadn't worked in 10 years. What do you do with that, right? And my heart was,
That.
I mean, a defining moment that I remember is like I was laying in my bed just crying and heartbroken. I thought, I know what that phrase means now, that she died of a broken heart, right? And I thought, if I don't pull it together, I will die of a broken heart. And I got 3 kids. It's not just about me. I got 3 kids to take care of. And it wasn't easy. And, it was like, to me, that was a big defining moment. And at that time, my priority had to be my children. But I still kept that dream in my heart, But then it was like, okay, put that dream on the back burner for a while, right? And then all of a sudden, after I'd worked a while and things, I got a job and several jobs. And in fact, the guy that I went to said, we just, and I, I was in accounting, but I'd never done computers. And in that 10 years, accounting became computerized. I didn't know the first thing about it. So the guy that hired me, I says, I can only work part-time because I got 3 kids. He said, that's fine. And he says, oh, by the way, we just bought a computer. It's sitting over there. One of the people in the office knows a little bit about it, but teach it to yourself. And, we'll work with you. And then he asked how much I wanted for a wage. And I told him, and he says, I think we can do better than that. He gave me $1 an hour more. It makes me cry because that was, God looking out for us.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, those were tough times, but, and we have to realize too, and then I guess this is a good point too, is that, our priorities change in life, right? Like you go through seasons. Okay, now's the time your kids are important. You're never going to get those years back, and it's not just all about you. It is about you and your kids and your family. And maybe you can't do everything about your dream, but you can do something towards your dream. And that's what I would encourage people, looking back. It's more looking back, but, every day do something that feeds your dream, and opportunities will open up. It's like today. I mean, I'm just so blown away. Like I said to God, I don't know how to promote my book. Would you help me? And I worked with the publishing company, whatever. And I says, I'm just really believing that you're gonna lead me and guide me, because I don't know. And all of a sudden, I get to know Ann a little bit and different people on different challenges. And all of a sudden yesterday, day before a phone call comes, would you be a guest on our show? I mean, that just blesses me to no end, because, I didn't create that opportunity, but it came, right? And so if we just keep, I think, like with your children, maybe you could sit down and say, what are some of your dreams in life? Sit down and say, let's talk about your dreams. It's not just about my dream. Talk to me about your dream. And what steps can we take to help you fulfill your dreams, right? Mm-hmm. And as you help your kids maybe take some steps towards their dreams, you can kind of model, this has always been on my heart as a mom. Maybe you had this other dream, and you could talk about it and share it with them and say, you don't even know what your dreams were, and you could just say, how do you think mom could fulfill her dream someday, and make it a group project? I don't know, but
I think that's a really good point, because I don't know that if we as women even, we don't even nurture our own dreams. And do we come around each other, and do we nurture each other's dreams? I think that's a really good point, Connie, because I don't know how many of us actually take it as a strategic, specific thing to come around someone, whether it's a relative, a child, a spouse, even a friend, like our friends here on the Restored Table, to actually say, what are your dreams? What are the dreams in your heart? And how can I help you nurture that?
Right. Right.
I just think, like, I just want to jump through the screen and like hug you and thank you, because honestly, you're like, just the fact that I was able to ask my question, right? Because there was some fear in that, but just being able to ask my question and then have you so meticulously and vulnerably answer that. I didn't know you were military. I didn't know what that was, your background. My heart is for military marriages specifically. That's my who. And so when I talk about marriages, specifically relationships, like there's this drum line and this heartbeat. And so for you to share your story of hope, like I know so many spouses that are in the military that are destructing marriages.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet here's this like God story, like miraculous God story, that here you are in your 70s writing books, your kids are walking it out with you, like you didn't crumble and like burn out and drown in that chaos that you felt at that time of divorce. And yet that was the story you could have chosen if you would have chosen bitterness.
All right.
Instead, you chose better. And I'm like, yes, give her the microphone, stand her on a stage, like scream it from the mountaintops. And this is also that drumline, and you're talking about, where it's like, we as sisters need to come together and encourage one another, instead of be like, oh, you're riffraff. Oh, you're divorced. You're used up. Like, oh my gosh, no, like pat her on the back and encourage her out of the pit and cheer her along. And I'm cheering you along at the same time as like you're pouring into me. And it's crazy right now in my head. I'm like, yes, go, 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 go. And I'm soaking it all in. I don't even know if that's a thing, but that's what's going on over here. So
awesome.
Donna,
I agree. I have waves of I'm just so thankful that you know what kind of a message you actually carry and the power of it. I think that I hear the sharing of your dream with your family, the supporting of one another in our dreams is huge. And I think that the world has possibly confused us as to what dreams are supposed to be. Like, we have dreams starting when we're young. That doesn't mean they're to happen right then and there.
Right.
And then they unfold and they take other people along with us, as you've taken so many along with you, and then you're still doing it. So, I don't know if you were always built like this, like to go through so much. Well, we all have gone through so much, and I'm still here. I'm still believing and hoping, and yeah, we're all here. And I don't imagine there are very many that haven't gone through extraordinary stuff. You have, gone to the other parts of the world. That's a big dream, but that shouldn't diminish somebody else who has a dream that is in, a closer quarter. They're still as powerful. Yours was to the nations.
Right.
And you did it. So we just have to have you back, I'm sure, because there's so much here.
Yes.
There's a lot.
Yeah, it's
big.
Big.
And it wasn't all a success. I mean, if you read my book, we went to New Guinea. It ended up we had to come home early. I felt like a failure, that everything didn't go right. But but then later in life, I was able to resurrect it yet again. And I went to I joined the Peace Corps at the age of 60, and I went to Botswana and worked on the AIDS pandemic for 2 years. And subsequent to that, I went with Mercy Ships. I lived on board the ship. It's the world's largest nonprofit hospital ship. And we were in Madagascar for 7 months. And then subsequent to that, I got a job with Samaritan's Purse, and I traveled all over the world for 2 years, filling in for people. And just in that short time, in that 2 years' time, and I ended up having to quit because I got extremely ill and almost died. But anyway, I was 3 times in Hanoi, Vietnam. I was in Liberia right after Ebola. They were declared Ebola free. I was in Greece twice working on the refugee crisis. I was in Jordan twice working with the Bedouin people.
Wow.
I was in South Sudan, and I was in Nepal. In Nepal, we were doing like earthquake rebuilds after the major earthquake. And so it was like I was living my dream life, right? It was amazing. And then all of a sudden I got sick. But anyway, that's another whole story. But the book basically each chapter, every other chapter is a chapter about one of the countries that I was in. So that you can read about that in the book. And anyway, that's and
I hear also that your dreams are really fulfilling in later years in life,
right.
and your heart is really for your grandchildren to after you're gone, maybe they'll read the story, but I bet they're watching more than what you know. They're a part of it more than what you know. And so I just see the link generationally. Had you fulfilled big dreams in your youth, well, that wouldn't have affected them quite so strongly. They wouldn't have, really been a part of it. So you've affected, you're drawing in the grandchildren, you're drawing in generations by fulfilling and keeping on going your dreams. That's a powerful thing in this day and age.
You know what I love too, if you read don't miss the dedication of the book. And the last part of my dedication goes like this. To my grandchildren, in the years ahead, you may want to know more about your heritage. May you come to know my heart and my life through the stories in this book. Much love, Grandma Connie. And then I added a section, and I just felt really led to add this. It says, to my descendants not yet born, you never knew me, but I hope my story inspires you. This book will give you a glimpse into the world in which I lived. Always remember who you are, a Scipio and a child of the Most High God.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
I'm just like fighting back those tears right now because I don't want the dam to like flood open and flood us out of here. But I do want to also acknowledge that last weekend was Mother's Day. And just as you said, like you have been to so many different countries and spread seed all around the world. And I want to take a moment specifically to speak to all the mother hearts out there that might not have children of their own womb, but that are called to not be bitter and plant seeds of bitterness, but to plant seeds of betterness.
Mhm.
Because what you've done, Connie, is taken those seeds around the world and you are still planting seeds of betterness. In your book, every person who gets that copy of your book that's your seed that you're leaving behind. So even if you're not even of the age to have children, you're still planting those seeds for even the ones yet unborn. And that's something totally like I have that on my heart for all of those mamas out there who are like, I didn't have children from my own womb. And yet here you are in your 70s and you're literally planting seeds still around the world. And those children are yet to come. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, thank you, Jesus.
Let me give you a moment of levity a minute. So, we talk about, I was thinking this morning about grandparents right now, they're having such a hard time. They can't see their family. They can't, they're like, get away from us. We might give you COVID, all this stuff. It's been so hard for older people. I was thinking about, the older people. I just want to encourage somebody out there to adopt a grandchild. If you've been taken out of lockdown, adopt the grandchild, because those kids need a grandma, and you need somebody to minister to, right? And it's like when it's so funny, we're military and we're stationed in Utah at the time, and we moved in a home, and the lady down the street, she had 8 kids of her own, if you can imagine, and she came over and she was just loved my kids, And I laughed because one day one of my kids said, "Oh, she's our fake grandma." But that woman was so important, became important to their lives, because I was really busy. I mean, I had 3 kids in 16 months. My daughter was 16 months old and we had twin sons. So I had 3 kids in a year and a half time, 16 months time. So that was crazy, but
I did the same thing.
did you? Cool. And so, that was a grandma that meant a lot to my kids, and they still, she's gone now, but they still remember her. But, we can still maybe, play an important role in people's lives, even at an older age,
Especially at an older age, I feel like, because some of your past responsibilities are no longer. Like maybe you're retired and you're home and you have more free time. But for me, as a military wife and a mama, those women and men who have been our grandparents for our children mean more to us than probably anyone else that I could say.
Yeah.
The aunts and uncles that have stepped in to fill those
Right.
roles when
Yeah.
when we couldn't or we weren't around our true family.
Right.
I think of our neighbor in Germany, and she didn't speak English, and I didn't speak hardly any German, and
Yeah.
yet we had elderly women that were widowed on our street. We had a lot of them because we're living in Germany, and if you think of World War II era, those men have passed now, and the wives are still. And they stepped into my life to
Yeah.
love on my children. And they
Yeah.
kept saying, it's because your children bring joy to the street. Like, we love hearing your children laugh and bicker and fuss, and it just brings us memories.
Yeah.
And to me, it was, you're bringing love and comfort.
Right.
And they loved on my kids. And all I got was the heart language. That's what I could understand of it, is that's
Right.
your heart language, is you're loving on my children. So Connie, like the be a grandparent to somebody. Please do that, because my kids have needed it. And
Yeah.
you know, my parents came over as much as they could. My in-laws came over as much as they could, but man, it was the daily seeing Frau Stobach
Yeah.
and seeing the neighbors come around us. So
Yeah, and we talk about, support our troops, support our troops. I'm totally in favor of that. Obviously, I was in myself for 4 years, and that's how I met my husband. And I was a military wife for 11 years, and now 2 of my sons, one just retired from the Air Force, the other is still in the Army Guard, and grandson in the Navy and so forth. So we're a big time military family. But, a way to support our troops is to, just give mom a break, let her have an evening off, take care of the kids, or if they can't afford it, take them all to Disneyland, something, it's just something where you can support the troops by helping their families, because so many guys are getting deployed, and gals, over and over and over again. And it's hard, when your husband's deployed and you're like a single parent, and it's not an easy road to hoe. So that's one way I could do that. I could just maybe one last story, whatever. This is just a snippet of, how we can't do what we used to, but we can still do something. So I spent 2 months in Nepal when I was with Samaritan's Purse. And during that time, of course, I learned a lot about Mount Everest. You couldn't actually see it from Kathmandu because of the smog and the weather and the clouds and, whatnot. But I did take a flight along the Himalayan mountains, and we saw Mount Everest in the distance. But I learned a lot about the climbing of Mount Everest and all the dangers and the challenges and the costs and all these things, And the bottom line is, I love mountain climbing. I've never been a huge climber, but, that was an interest in life. And I will never climb Mount Everest, let's face it. I'll be having 2 prosthetic knees, and, I'm 72, and the chances of me going to Everest are slim to nothing, right? But I can encourage somebody else who maybe has a dream in their heart, because in my book, I have a small section under Nepal about Let's Talk Everest. So, I share what I've learned about, like I said, the cost, the issues, the challenges, and all these things. And if somebody that has a dream to go there, they could read it and maybe, catch a tidbit or 2 of information that would help them along their dream. So that's just a small example, that's not a dream I can fulfill, but it's maybe somebody else could read a little bit about it.
Wow, that's really interesting. We never know why we have certain dreams. They may not even be for us, but to dream, actually to come up with words and encouragement for another.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a real heart of service, isn't it?
Yeah.
We just don't really realize the power of dreams and what we carry. You obviously have a great knowledge of what you carry by now. Maybe you didn't always, but
Right.
to have that, you do carry a certain amount of knowing or authority of what you carry. That way it imparts really quite powerfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Connie, can you just show us your book for those who have heard you mention your book, Dream On?
Yeah, but I think it comes out backwards.
Oh,
I don't
right.
know how to flip it.
No, it doesn't.
The alarm clock.
It's good.
Yeah, no, it's good. It worked perfect.
So it's on Amazon, and I actually in the restored table I also put a link to it. I don't know, but you can just go to Amazon and Google books by Connie CPO, and then they'll come up.
Yeah, I put the link to it as well. I put the link in restored table.
Again, I missed
Connie,
that.
for coming on with us. You have just been such a treat. It's just, your words have just washed over us and gone really deep into our hearts and given us so much to really chew on and to think about, and really just to ponder, really that key nugget that you may not get your dream fulfilled, but are you going to help fulfill someone else's dreams? That just makes me want to cry, because I'm like, wow, we in Canada here, we maybe don't have the military mindset that you have in America. We don't have a military that would be in front and center like you do in America, and we honor that. But maybe there's someone who's a single mom, someone who has come in that's an immigrant, who that whole thing of being an auntie, being a grandma, you know, like, what can I pour into someone who I see that needs me to help them dream on, just like your book was. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will have to have you back, as
Yes.
Donna and both Kimberly addressed. There's just so much that we could unpack and just glean from. And that's one of the things we want to have at this table, is no question that can't be asked.
Right.
And we want to have generations. We want to have the generations, even if our perspectives are a little different, even if we don't agree. It's okay. This is a safe place where we can come together and have a conversation of how to move each other forward, which is what we are doing as coaches. So I just want to thank you for joining us today and for being part of the Restored Table. And thank you again, Connie, from the bottom of our hearts, for coming and joining us. And I hope you'll come back and have
You're
coffee
very welcome.
and chat with us again.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. So we will see you next week. Everyone, have a great week. And until then, we will see you next week. Bye-bye.